Well, it's a tough time to be a North Florida sports fan. The Jaguars haven't won a game. Florida, they only beat Samford. And Florida State is 0-3. The only bright spot are the Bulldogs, which we'll talk about. But right now, we got to talk about Billy Napier and the Gators. He's still the head coach. Not many people are probably happy about that. The Gators are at kind of a do-or-die situation right now. They need to figure it out.
Yeah, but the bottom line is once there's this much noise, I can't imagine Billy Napier overcoming it. I hate it. I think Billy's a good guy. I think he tried hard. I think he's organized. It doesn't look like he's the guy. My guess is Billy Napier's not going to make it. When they decide to make a change, Alessandra, who knows? But I can't imagine. Now, listen, can you get hot and beat Mississippi State and get the off week and come home and beat UCF? And if you do, then all of a sudden you're 3-2 and maybe people feel differently about it. But it doesn't feel like it does it. It feels like there's so much noise in the system, it's going to be hard to overcome. I mean, honestly, they've become old Vanderbilt. They've become, I'm not so sure there's a program in the SEC that's struggling, that feels more incompetent than Florida does. And I hate saying that about the Gators, but I don't know that there's a program in the SEC that feels as incompetent right now as the Florida Gators do. So I can't imagine when there's this much noise in the system, can you overcome it? I hope for Billy's sake he does. But I would be surprised if Billy Napier is the coach next year.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing to watch again, well, there was a lot of hard things to watch against the Gators for Saturday, but the worst part is that the fans were booing him at halftime and after the game. You lost your fan base, and that really solidified it. It's hard to come back from that. It's hard to win your fan base over after you've been disappointing them for 3 years.
And one of the reasons, Alessandra, is he doesn't seem to have a knack. Look, I was all about playing DJ Lagway. I said, if you're going to move forward with the freshman, let him grow. He can do some things Graham Mertz didn't do. Well, instead, Billy decided he would alternate. Mertz, then Lagway. Mertz, then Lagway. Okay. But if you're going to do that, it can't be the whole game. Find the hot hand who's playing better. So at the end of the game, Florida got it to 33-20. Mertz led him on a touchdown drive. After that, A&M came down, missed a field goal. Now, when A&M misses the field goal, suddenly it's 33-20. You're still in the game. There's 3:42 to play in the game. But here comes Lagway, who obviously, at that point, Mertz should have stayed in the game because he had the hot hand. He was 12 out of 15. Lagway was 5 out of 11. But instead, he went to Lagway. Lagway throws a pick, game over. Billy was asked about it afterwards. He said, well, we made a decision that we were going to stay with that rotation regardless of the outcome. Well, the outcome's all that matters. You can't be regardless of the outcome. Winning the game is all that mattered that day. I thought he really dropped the ball there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And after his press conference, he just seemed defeated. Yeah, and, you know, he did take accountability, and you have to do it because you can't really defer the blame to anyone else. So at least you can, at least he did it. It's hard, though, because I do like Billy Napier. I think he's a great guy. He seems like a good coach, but maybe not a good head coach in the SEC.
That's right. You said it. He looked defeated when he came off the field. You could see it in his face. You could see it in his press conference afterwards. Billy Napier kind of knows what's coming, and it is a shame. My guess is he's a very good program builder or part of a program building. I think he's a very organized guy. He's probably a good assistant football coach. I doubt if he doesn't make it here. And again, he's not fired yet now. But if he does get fired, I don't know that I see Billy Napier getting another chance like this. And I was wrong. I thought because he's so organized, he's so attentive to detail, he's had so much in his favor in terms of resources, I thought he would resuscitate the Florida football program. It doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Okay, let's talk about some more depressing news. Florida State, they're 0-3.
Yeah.
Second time under Mike Norvell's tenure that they're starting 0-3. The last time was in 2021. Their final record in 2021 was 5-7. So no good news right now for the Seminoles.
Well, I'll tell you, too, and that's one of the biggest surprises in the country. They started in the top 10. Nobody stopped in the top 10. I think it's the first team to start in the top 10 and then lose 3 straight games to unranked teams like ever. So it's really bad. I don't think this is an indictment of Mike Norvell. I think he's a good football coach. But I do think it's an indictment of the plan. You can't live on portal transfers every year. You have to have some players in your program that have learned what it's like to be a Seminole, that have been there 3-4 years, that can be the leaders in the locker room, who know what that spear means, who know what that stadium means, who know what that chant means. And it's hard to have guys like that if all your prominent players are transfers. And I think, so is this an indictment of Mike Norvell as a coach? Not in my mind. But is it an indictment of the plan to always live on so many transfers? Yes, it is. And that's the lesson I think they'll learn in Tallahassee.
Yeah, and you can tell from last season, remember, Florida State was a very good team. They were undefeated in the regular season. So Mike Norvell's a good coach. You know that he can win. But they're 0-3 now. The excuse that the transfers are still meshing or whatever, you can't use that anymore because they all already had a bye week. In my opinion, I'm going to be frankly honest, DJU cannot be the quarterback. He needs to be benched right now. He's not good. He hasn't shown any promising plays this whole season. They need to figure out what to do, and that starts with QB1.
I think you've hit it. DJ Uyunglele probably needs to be benched, or at least they need to see what they've got in Brock Glenn and Luke Kromenhoek. They need to see what they've got in the backups. It's got to start with Brock Glenn. He's been there longer. He's athletic. He can run a little bit, which fits that offense. But they've got to find out what they. I think you're dead on, Alessandra. You've got to see what you've got. DJ is a game manager. If you're running the ball really well, if you're staying ahead of the chains, he's got a big arm. He can throw some deep balls. If the guy's open, he can hit him. But he's proven now. He's been at Clemson. He's been at Oregon State. He's now at Florida State. He's not a guy that can lift you above the X's and O's, and that's what they need right now. I wouldn't be surprised to see Brock Glenn when Cal comes to town. I really wouldn't. I'm not saying he's going to start the game, but if Brock Glenn doesn't play a little bit against Cal, I'd be surprised.
I think it's so crazy that that's going to be like Cal's coming to Florida State. It's going to be a conference game, which is so bizarre.
And it is bizarre. And luck of the draw for the Noles, Cal's pretty good. This is probably the best. Cal's 3-0 now. They already won at Auburn. This is the best Cal team in many, many years. You talk about you can't get a break. FSU, of all the years to play Cal, you're playing them on a year where they're good. And they have a really good defense and a pretty good offense. So FSU's a favorite in that game, but I don't know if I'm picking them. It's a tough game. It's a tough fourth game for a team that's 0-3.
It's so funny because I remember, each week we do this. We're like, oh, Florida State will get back. Yeah. They'll right the ship, and they haven't righted the ship for us. So I'm not picking Florida State. I'm not doing it because I hate when I lose because of my picks, just pointing that out. Okay, let's talk about somewhat of a bright spot, Georgia. They barely beat Kentucky. And, we talked about this. It's SEC road games are very hard to win. Kirby Smart told us after their past game that it's a tough environment to win. They were able to get it done, but it was not pretty.
But I'll say this about Georgia. The bottom line is, did you win the game? Every year, even the good teams have games like that, where even though you're rolling everybody, the way the stars align, you have that tough game you've got to survive. It was against Missouri last year for Georgia. And a few years ago, it was Kentucky again. But you know something about Georgia? They always find a way to win those games. Doesn't matter if you win at 13-12, which they did, or 45-10. What matters is, did you win the game? And I'll say this about the Bulldogs. When they run into one of those games, Bulldog fans are nervous and biting their nails, but Kirby Smart finds a way to win those games. All that matters is, did you win the game? And the Georgia Bulldogs did.
Okay, let's look ahead to this Saturday. Georgia going to Alabama. It's probably going to be a marquee game for probably the whole college football season.
Yeah.
Going to be a good matchup. Alabama had a big win over Wisconsin this past weekend as well. So what do you like about this game?
Well, number one, how nervous you'll be. That's one of the things I like. That's probably what I like best about this game, because your Crimson Tide is playing. Look, Alabama's at home. Alabama's pretty good. They went up there to Wisconsin and laid it to them. It's hard to pick against Georgia, but I think they're up against it. Playing Alabama on the road, I think Alabama's very good. I'll be interested to see how the Crimson Tide respond in a game this big under a new coach. You always had Nick on the sideline. They could calm you down. They could get you through the big moments. I think Kalen DeBoer is a good coach, but he hasn't been in this setting with this team yet. You're right. It might be the game of the year in college football. I can't wait to watch it.
And let's talk about Texas taking over the #1 spot. Texas is really good. Georgia dropped down. Are we looking at an all-SEC matchup in the national championship this year with Texas and Georgia, you think?
There's a chance they could play 3 times. Think about it. They play in the regular season. That's 1 time. The best 2 teams in the SEC are going to play in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, you're right.
That's twice. And then they could play again in the playoffs if they're the 2 best teams, and it looks like they may be. So there's a chance Georgia and Texas could play 3 times this year. Would not surprise me at all.
That's insane.
Crazy.
We'll see who comes out. Hopefully we get to talk about a Georgia Bulldogs win. And that's how you know I'm an unbiased journalist, because I just said that.
I'm very impressed.
Frank, thank you so much, and thank you for watching Campus Corner.